Hello and welcome to Data Playground. In this video, you'll master 4 powerful functions every Excel user needs to know. So why are these functions such a big deal? Because they help you answer questions instantly, and they're also perfect functions for automating your reports without using pivot tables. First off, let's take a look at the syntax for SUMIF and SUMIFs. SUMIF takes in the range, criteria, and SUMRange. The range is the range containing the criteria. So if the criteria is to see the sum by the sales rep, the range is going to be the sales rep. The criteria is the criteria that we want to get the sum of. And then the sum range is what we want to sum together. Now, for SUMIFs, the syntax is a little bit different. The sum range comes first as the first parameter, and then the criteria range and the criteria. So it's important to know what the sum range should be and what the range is and what the criteria is. The major difference between SUMIF and SUMIFs with an S is that SUMIF without the S takes only one criteria, but SUMIFs with the S takes multiple criteria. You can use SUMIFs, however, even if you have just one criteria. Now let's see how both of these work. Let's say we want to calculate the total revenue for each of the sales reps in our data set. Now, since we're calculating for each sales rep, that's just one criteria. So we can use the SUMIF function. We'll start by typing SUMIF. And our first parameter is going to be the range that contains the criteria we're looking for. In that case, that's going to be the sales rep column. We can select all of column C. Our next parameter is going to be the criteria that we're looking at summing the data for. In that case, we can select Sarah. And then our sum range is going to be our revenue column. So we can select all of column E. Now, when we press enter and copy the data down, we can see the total revenue by each of the sales rep. Now, what if we want to calculate the total units sold for each of the products in each of the region? Now, since we're looking at both the products and the region, that is more than one criteria. So in this case, we need to use the SUMIFs function. We're going to start with SUMIFs with the S. And now let's pay attention to the parameters. The first parameter we need is the sum range, which is going to be the unit sold range because we want to sum the units sold for each of these parameters. So let's select all of the units sold. Now, because we're going to copy this formula across and down, it's important that we lock ourselves. So I'm going to press the F4 key to lock our unit sold range, which is the sum range. Now, the next parameter is the criteria range 1. So let's start with the product criteria. So we're going to select all of the products column. Now it's also important to lock ourselves as we're going to copy these down. So I'm going to lock criteria range 1. And since I'm going to copy the criteria down and across, I want to make sure it stays fixed in column K. So I'm going to put a $ before column K. If you want to learn more about using $ in Excel, I have created a video that I'm going to put a link to. Now, our second criteria range is the region. So again, I'm going to select all of column A, and I want to keep that locked. And our criteria is going to be the region. So I want to select North. But as I copy this down and across, I want to make sure it stays locked in row 1 so that I am only referencing all of the data in row 1. So I'm going to put a $ before row 1. And when I press enter and copy this down and across, we can see the units sold for each of these regions and each of these products. And we have done that using the SUMIFs. And when we go into one of these functions, we can see that it's referencing the same products and region as our criteria, the same units sold as our sum range, and our criteria has shifted as we've moved our data across and downwards. Now, let's take a look at the COUNTIF and COUNTIFs function. You'll notice that this function appears very similar to the SUMIFs function, except that they do not have a sum range. So they just have a range, which is going to be the range we want to count, and the criteria that we want to count. And also, COUNTIFs works the same way, except that with COUNTIFs, we can count multiple criteria. So, let's assume we have data of employees, their gender, and their department. And we want to find the head count of these employees across each department. Notice that we're not summing any total amount or total revenue. We're just counting the number of employees in each department. So, since we have just one criteria, which is department, we can use COUNTIF. Again, watch out for the parameters it asks for. So for the range, this is going to be the range we want to count. So we want to count the departments. So we want to count the number of times each department appears. And our criteria is the department here. So we close this and we copy this down. I'm going to make this just a number. Now we can see the head count of employees across each department. And we can do a quick check. This is 50, and we can make sure we have 50 employees without the headers. Now let's see how this applies where we have multiple criteria. So say we want to do a head count, but we also want to count the genders across the different departments. So now we have two criteria, which is both the department and the gender. So here we do a COUNTIFs, and our first criteria, let's start with the department. So we're going to select all of the department range and select the department. Again, let's make sure we fix our data. And also for the range, we want to make sure our column stays fixed. So I'm going to put the $sign until it comes before column I. And our next criteria range is going to be the gender. So I'm going to select column B. Again, I'm going to fix that. And I'm going to select the criteria. So that's male. And again, I want to fix our row 1. And when I copy this down and across, now I can see the head count of the department by gender. Now, we've seen how powerful these functions can be. The best part is the same logic works with average if, average ifs, and even max if. I'll be doing a video soon showing how you can use these functions to automate any report. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. And if you found this video helpful, give it a like. It really helps more people find it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.